Hello there! Look, thanks for tuning in. We're really pleased to bring you another water mixable oils lesson. And the subject is this beautiful turtle. If you love art, then you might like to jump onto our webpage at www.montmart.net because we have lots more lessons there, as well as links to our Facebook, Instagram and our art club, The Creative Connection. So let's paint a turtle. First we have to transfer the outline. There is a link to the PDF lesson plan in the corner of the clip. Use a pencil to do this. I will say that any bad line work can be cleanly removed with an electric eraser without any horrid smudging. Take your time and don't start the project until you are happy with your drawing. Good rendering won't save a poorly drafted work. Okay then, well, now that we've drawn up our turtle, we can start the painting, and the first thing I'm going to do is to tint it a burnt sienna. Although water mixable oils can be thinned with water, I like to use water mixable linseed oil as it goes on a bit smoother and I feel like I have more control. Well, that's nice and dry now. The next step is to apply some Payne's Grey into the trees, and I'm using the Professional Series oil brushes for this. These brushes are beautiful, so let's get this Payne's Grey on. If you wanted the tint to dry quickly, you could also use acrylic for this step. This technique of painting from dark to light gives a really nice painterly look to the work. Next, create a mix from cobalt blue and zinc white. Give it a mix and using an angle brush, lay it into the top area of the sky. Next, add more white to the first mix and apply it under the first block of paint. Again, add more white to further lighten the tone and apply this under the second block. Finally, add pure zinc white into the skyline and cut it in around those trees. Zinc white is not opaque, so you can really see the warmth of that tint coming through the coat. Now we can softly blend all of those colours into a smooth transition. I'm not over blending as I really like a bit of texture. Next, I lay out some lemon yellow and olive green. I use a filbert to dry brush the olive green into the Payne's Grey. The grey must be dry to the touch for this step. Once the green is in, I wet on wet blend some lemon yellow into it. I make sure I allow some of the underpainting to show through. I then add more Payne's Grey into the coat to suggest shadows. This is what gives it shape and dimension. To create more realism, I apply dabs of white into the trees in points. This suggests the light filtering through the foliage. A thin line of zinc white under the tree line suggests the beach. I then add a touch of sky blue to the white and lay in the waterline. This unification is important in the composition as my turtle is being viewed half underwater. I then lay in the background of the water with sky blue and cut in around Mrs. Turtle's head. I really love the way oil paint goes onto a canvas, so smooth and rich. Add more white to the mix and apply it to the right hand side. Then blend the two tones so the transition is smooth. This differing tone breaks up the monotony of a single tone. I then lighten the tone slightly and paint it into the bottom portion of the canvas. Alrighty then, well, that's the underpainting of the water done. I'm going to add another glaze over the top of that to create a little bit more depth. But while that's still drying, we can start painting our turtle. And the first step of her is to lay in some tones for the underpainting. So let's lay them in. The colours and position of the tones are outlined in the PDF, so I won't go into that here. But I will say to ensure that these tones are relatively translucent, so the tint can be seen to an extent. Tones created from glazing are rich and complex and add much to a piece. You will also notice I have wrapped some rubber bands around the handle of a large brush to act as a sort of bodgy mail stick. I don't know how many paintings I have ruined from paint getting on the back of my hand. Have a look at how lovely that vermilion glaze looks over that tint. I always get a little bit worried at the underpainting stage as the seeds of doubt creep in. But I remind myself to push on. I think it's probably healthy to be your own critic, as you can get the best from yourself. But like anything, you have to be realistic. It certainly helps if you love what you are painting. If something resonates with you, chances are the piece will turn out better. I lay a little lemon yellow into the fish. I have two types of fish, but you might like to create differing types. The fish here are chasing Mrs. Turtle and getting a feed off the barnacles and parasites. I create a very translucent mix of water mixable linseed oil to a touch of phthalo blue. I turn the canvas upside down and apply it to the bottom portion of the canvas. The blue underpainting must be dry to the touch. I cover the bottom fish with this glaze too, as this will give the illusion that they are deeper. I then start to lay in the top coat with the darks first, starting with ivory black and Payne's grey. I paint in the eye and try to get lots of detail in. I then lay in the dark marks on her cheek. Don't make the colour too uniform though. A filbert brush is best for roundish applications. I have supplied an A4 image of the finished project for reference in the PDF, but if you are going to do this project, you might want to get some close-up reference shots of a real turtle's head. I always spend time on the eyes as they are such an important element in a work. And there is something about turtles' eyes. They look thoughtful and compassionate to me. I paint in the geometric patterning on her flipper and continue to lay in any areas of deep shadow. I add a little water to increase the flowability and then add the patterning on the other flipper. It is important for that drawing to still be visible. I will reiterate, for this reason, ensure the underpainting glaze is translucent. Before I started this painting, I had not noticed the complex patterns and how each marking related to one another. I then create a dirty grey from titanium white, Payne's grey and olive green and lay it into the top of the neck. Apply some tone into the shell. This colour is mixed from zinc white and olive green. I move on to the head and lay in a tone created from titanium white with a touch of flesh tone and blend it into any areas that need it. Like the black under the eye here, I continue to add some detail around the eye and then fill in the area between the markings around the face. This light tone really pops and my turtle suddenly comes alive. One thing I will mention is that it is a good practice to use your little finger as a support. I darken the colour with a little more flesh tone and paint in the underside of the head. I am mindful that this tone is laid in panels of a particular shape. These shapes can be thought of as scales. Ensure that the tone beneath can be seen between each scale. The scales also appear to relate to each other. For roundish scales, use a filbert and don't overly thin the paint. The scales under the head change shape and are more elongated. I use a round brush to apply these. The area under the head is in shadow, so I darken the tone with some more Payne's grey and olive green and lay these shapes in over the olive underpainting. The scales in the area under the neck are in deep shadow and are laid in with Payne's grey mixed with titanium white in little round dabs. I then paint in the underside of the shell and dry brush in a yellow over the top and finish it off with a highlight of white along the edge. The areas between the markings are given a thin coat of green that move to a white as I get closer to the flat area of the flipper. This would catch more light. I darken this tone and paint it into the rear flippers. I use my fine round for this and finally paint this tone into the area between Mrs. Turtle's shell. Well, there we go. That's my turtle essentially finished. All I need to do now is to put the top coat on the fish and lay in the reflections. The fish at the top are closer to the light, so they would appear more vibrant, and the little ones in the background will be toned down. When painting elements like this, you don't need to slavishly put in every bit of detail. In fact, in most cases, it looks better if there is some sort of economy to the amount of detail put in. These fish down here look fine with stripes simply applied. What makes them stand out is the burst of mid-yellow that suggests a highlight. Finally, the icing on the cake, the suggested reflections. These are put in with a mix of zinc and a touch of sky blue. Hold the brush lightly and dry brush them on. This touch close up looks like messy shapes, but from a distance looks quite effective. That is the magic of painting. A dot of titanium white on the eye and voila! See you next time!